Hey, what's up everyone? It's me, Matt from Diazable, doing another album review. And today we're checking out the Japanese band Gates of Hopeless with their album In the Twilight of Nocturne. Yeah. A little background on this band is they are a death metal, hardcore, metallic band, from what their description says. And they are from different parts of Osaka, Japan, but pretty much Osaka. And they've been around since 2004. They've had like 3 or 4 EP, well, I think 1 or 2 demos, 3, 4 EPs, and like 2 full-length album releases. This is their latest release they've ever put out, and I recently checked them out at the Blood X Festival in Tokyo, Japan in 2023 this year. Didn't know much about them and listened to them beforehand and saw them live. And yeah, I'll give you my thoughts on this album and then a score. So let's get into it. Starting the album off is like an introduction instrumental track. It has some like clock ticking noises that are kind of have like a weird haunting eerie sound to it that builds up this weird feeling. And in the background you have like organs and percussions playing. It feels like a start to a dark video game of some sorts, and it feels like angels are descending upon you right before something bad is going to happen. And then they build up like something towards the end with some like wind chimes and everything. Doesn't really pay off. It just kind of goes, and this intro kind of drags a little bit too long.
Even when you're gone, I'll tell them my religion's you. When punctures
Has a little bit of like odd guitar tuning. It's really hard to hear some of the guitars sometimes in this track. But when they can be heard, they do have some heavy chugs to them, and they sound pretty brutal. The vocals, though, they seem a bit like strained, like the vocalist is really trying a little too hard, and it's coming off a little like scratchy. The production feels like early 2000s metalcore style in terms of like sounding a little like underproduced and janky, but I don't know if that was on purpose or not. Also, the flow of the song, it feels like it doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of plays, and it just kind of ends. And so that was kind of weird. And then the drums are kind of hard to hear over the weird guitars, even though it's hard to hear the guitars at times. Well, it's not really hard to hear the guitars. They're just weird. They sound weird. It's a heavy song overall, but it's not that memorable, I feel. This song is much tighter compared to the previous song, but the guitars are still a little bit weird and seem a bit off on timing. But they have some wild and like pretty sick riffs here, so that makes up for that. The tempo has a nice pickup throughout the song, and it has a good flow to it, especially in the back end of the song. There's a feature from the vocalist of Loyal to the Grave, Koba here, and his feature sounds really good. His vocals sound full body. They match pretty well. The breakdown at the end is a bit odd on timing, but it does sound okay. So here's a little clip of To Kill. Yeah, those riffs sound really good, but it's still a little bit off on timing. I feel like you could hear it the first part of that song. The vocalist sounds really winded here when the song starts and everything. But I will say the guitars, the riffs, they sound really good. Even though they are drowning out the drums and bass, I think you can't really hear them that much. And it feels also the song is just kind of like going nowhere and has nothing particularly great to offer, I feel. Has some of the riffs can be a bit generic at times, and the breakdown is pretty generic. But the guitar solo pretty tight and everything. Very long song that doesn't do much, it feels like. But at the very end, there's some nice double bass from the drums and everything, which is pretty good and everything. But overall, this song doesn't do much in terms of being important or that amazing. Riffs are more interesting on this track than everything that's been played so far, so that's good. Some clean vocals are added here. They have some like reverby, echoey sound to it, so that's a nice variety. I was really surprised that the guitars are kind of tuned down a little bit, so the drums and everything can be heard a little bit more. So the mixing on this is a lot better. The clean vocals add some nice variety to the track and everything. So it's a really well arranged song, I think. There's a good two-step in the middle that's pretty tight and everything, but the snare drum is really hard to hear during that part. And there's some backing guitar scaling and everything later in the song that's nice. Overall, the most interesting song up until this point, and I feel bad saying that's not saying much. So here's a little clip of True Justice Never Die. Sounds all right. Vocals sound beefier here, and he's like projecting more here, so it sounds really good. Guitars are balanced out in the mix well. Drums and bass are getting some nice mix as well. Um, it sounds better, but also there's nothing too wowing here. Sonically, it sounds better, but it doesn't sound too interesting when they're playing here and everything. They sound tight as a unit, that's for sure. They can play well together. But their songs, one thing for sure is they're a little bit bloated. They're a little too long, especially this track. But the guest vocalist here, he comes out of nowhere and he sounds like a bat out of hell. So that's pretty good and everything. So I think without the guest vocalist here, the song would be kind of just mid, but he makes it a lot better. And the breakdown is kind of like, eh. The song opens up with some like dueling guitar riffs and everything. Like it's like a guitar battle and everything. So it sounds pretty cool. Fast, and lots of guitars are just like wheedly, 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 wheedly here. Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's just that wheedles. And there's some nice drum fills throughout the song. So overall, it's an okay song. It's a shorter song, but it's still not saying much. But it's nice that it's a bit shorter and not bloated. I will say the music they're making here, I respect that they're making this kind of music, or they're just making music in general. But it's really hard to get excited for it because everything just seems very bland or generic. This song's a bit rough, even though it has a bit some groove to it. It's the quality here. Like it sounds like it's a live recording, and it just doesn't sound good in any way. The quality on this song is a little rough. It's just a song, and it's not too special. They try to sound really hard at the end, and it comes off kind of not great. And the guest vocalist sounds just like the singer from Gates of Hopeless, so it doesn't really do much. And I guess the breakdown has some like some oomphness to it, but overall it's not. It doesn't sound like a good song. So here's a little clip of it, beginning of Reprisal. The guitar tuning here is much better on this song. It has a nice crunch to it, and it opens with a decent breakdown. There's nothing new with this track, but it's very solid for what they're doing for once. Like they're playing really well here. The double bass with the solid riffs in this song are good, and it has some like slow, chuggy guitar parts with the cymbals backing it up before the breakdown. But I feel like the breakdown is a bit so-so. But overall, the structure of the song and the style and the sound, pretty good. Here's a very typical Gates of Hopeless song. I feel like it sounds like previous songs, almost like verbatim. Nothing new here. Yeah, I just feel like I'm listening to the same song. Vocals are very muddled, very death metal-y, but just not too impressive. They're just not even memorable. If you switch out the songs and names and put them together, I couldn't tell which one's which. I say the only good thing about this song is like there's a nice good two-step in it that sounds solid, but overall not that memorable. This is another instrumental track here, and again it sounds like a prelude to a video game, or like you're going off to fight the final boss in a game, and you're preparing for the battle and everything to get all your supplies and just like marching up with the percussions and everything. It's good. It's surprisingly like these intros and stuff and instrumentals are like the best part of this album, and just that alone makes this song pretty epic the way it builds up for the song. So yeah, the first thing I noticed on this track was the guitars. They sound really, really dated and jarring. But then I'm thinking about it, this band started in 2004, and I think they've been sticking with that older style a little bit, and just doesn't sound that good, or like they haven't really tried to switch it up a little bit, or the production, because it just sounds really dated in a weird way. Especially after coming from that interlude that sounded really good, this doesn't really match the flow and the feel of that interlude and the vibe of the album. Drums seem really sloppy. Um, Also, I feel like a lot of their songs have no intro and they have no ending. They just were like listening to the middle of a song because they just go nowhere. They're just going and going and going. They're just bullshitting around. It doesn't sound that great. There is a guitar solo here that doesn't sound that bad, so that's one saving grace here. And there's like a cool soft spoken word part, but then like overall, it just the flow and the sound of this song, it sounds like demo material, like demo stuff they made that they didn't finish, because all their songs sound really rough, and this is a perfect example of how just rough they sound, but not in a good way. Like they need a few more takes to get things worked out. It doesn't sound that great, and there's like a build up towards the end to the breakdown that's kind of okay. The breakdown's all right, but it doesn't really help save the song. So yeah, that's how I feel about this album from Gates of Hopeless in the Twilight of Nocturnal. One thing I just want to say, the production is probably one of the top offenders for this album. It's really rough, that production. Like I said about the last song, it feels like extreme demo material here, like unfinished work. It doesn't feel very polished. It's just incomplete, it feels like. And the way they play, at times they sound really good together, but a lot of the times it just feels like they're going nowhere. It's just like going in circles in terms of like no real good like song structure or flow to their album. Um, the like the vocals too, like they sound like he's trying really too hard. He doesn't know how to use like his vocals and properly scream and stuff. He sounds like he's working too hard. He's screaming from the wrong part of his body. And then like there's the drum issues of like not being heard a lot of the time. Um, yeah, and the bass too, you can't really hear a lot. There's some fun stuff that you hear, like some double bass every once in a while, double kick drums and everything, but they're not, you don't hear them that often. I'd say the best thing is here, like the guitars, they're kind of interesting for the most part sometimes. They can be very generic and dull, but they do have some interesting riffs and styles and playing. And then they do sound good in the mix sometimes. They are a little loud and overpower other things, but when they're not overpowered, the songs can be sound pretty balanced and whatnot. And another thing I think is good, since I think they can play pretty well together when they are playing a good part of their song, when they're not just playing generic stuff or just doing whatever. They could sound good. But yeah, this it's a bit of a rough listening, everything. Um, Feel bad I can't say too much that's nice about it, but it's just kind of like if you like that early 2000s metalcore style, you'll like this. But yeah, it doesn't really do too much for me, but I don't necessarily hate it too much. Yeah. So this album from Gates of Hopeless, I think, is a decent 5.5 out of 10. Yeah. So links down below to this band. Check them out. Japan scene is pretty interesting. If you like different bands from different parts of the world, check out the scene out there. It's pretty cool. And I'm Matt from Diazmo. Thanks for coming on by. I will see you later.